Before the sun came up, Mary Magdalene walked through the mist on her way to the tomb where Jesus had been laid to rest. I often wonder what was on her mind when I think about this reading. What must have been occupying her thoughts as she stepped through the darkness? Her lamp would have thrown just enough light for the next few steps. Mary was a disciple, no less a disciple than any of the men who followed Jesus. I imagine her thoughts probably fell on the time she spent with him and how hopeful everyone had been. What they had waited for over many generations was finally coming to pass. The hope of the Jews, and now of all humanity, wrapped up in this one man who was now in a tomb. But for Mary, and for those closest to Jesus, I think there was more in her heart. It was the way he looked at her, the eyes of compassion. There was the way he treated people who were in need with gentleness and equality. There was the way he spoke, like someone who had authority, but absolutely nothing to prove. And there were 100 other things. The way he played with children, the way he loved mountaintops, and the way he changed their lives day by day, moment by moment, until none of them could imagine life without him. But now, here they were. Mary reached the tomb in the darkness, and her lamp shone on the giant boulder that had been used to seal the opening. She couldn't tell at first whether or not the shadows were playing tricks on her eyes, but the closer she got, the more she recognized that this massive stone had been moved, and the opening to the tomb was exposed. Without missing a beat, she feared the worst and immediately ran to tell the others what had happened. She was in tatters, inconsolable. They've taken him. They've taken the Lord from the tomb. Peter and John jumped up and hit the ground running as fast as they could through the first rays of sun that was burning off the mist, and John made it there first and came to the opening looking to see. A few seconds later, a breathless Peter stumbled past him right into the tomb and discovered it was true. The linens were there, and the cloth that covered Jesus' face was there, rolled up by itself, but no Jesus. Someone had taken him. It was the only explanation. Have you ever had one of those days when it accidentally slips out of your mouth? You've had a real bad week and you get so low that you actually have the guts to say, well, at least it couldn't get any worse. As soon as those words leave your lips, a sense of dread makes the adrenaline rush through your chest, and you think, why did I say that? Generally, I'm all about optimism and trying to expect the best, but still, in the back of my mind, I sometimes hear that voice. Things might not work out. What if things go wrong? I think we spend a lot of time worrying. And when we worry, what we find is that our worries generally focus on one of two possibilities. We're either worried about the future, what's going to happen, or we worry over things that have already happened in the past. Regret is basically worry about what happened before, and it can be crippling. The things we've done can haunt us so overwhelmingly that we are rendered useless here and now. Peter and John didn't waste any time getting back to the others, but Mary Magdalene was just a puddle of heartbroken despair. She crumpled to the ground at the opening of the tomb and wasn't sure where to go from there. It was hard enough to be witness to his execution, but this was too much. She just couldn't bear it. And through her tears, she suddenly noticed some activity in the tomb. 2 men in white were there. The passage calls them angels, and they speak to Mary kindly. "Why are you weeping?" Her throat sore from all the deep crying, manages to allow her to say, "They've taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they've laid him." It's almost as if the angels were a purposeful distraction as she sees someone behind her who asks her again, "Woman, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for?" Mary is at the end of her rope and tells this stranger what happened, and suddenly he calls her name, Mary. In that moment, nothing could have held her back. She runs to him and falls on him, and in that moment of reconnection, she becomes the first apostle. Jesus chose her to see him first, and he gives her the job of delivering the news that he was not stolen, but resurrected. She's finally convinced to return to the others, and she starts in, "I have seen the Lord." The truth about both of these situations, focusing in worry about the past or the future, is that neither one of them even exist. All that we have and all that really exists in a tangible and concrete way that doesn't rely on our memories to bring them back to our minds is this moment right now. The one that we mark in seconds on our watches as they pass. The one that Mary marked with the tears that fell down her cheeks. Even the moments that we experienced at the beginning of this service have passed into memories because we are living this moment. In a very real sense, the moments that have passed and the moments that have yet to be just don't exist. They only survive as electrical impulses on our synapses, some that fade faster than others, but still we worry. We cling to that process of worrying because it feels like doing something and being productive. At least we're not sitting around doing nothing. We're running to the tomb and running back to tell everyone that our worst fears have come true. What has your attention today? It's Easter. It's a beautiful day. The vaccinations are on the rise. Families are together. There's children hunting eggs, and there's chocolate everywhere. What's not to love? But I wonder what's under the surface. What has your fear engine revving? What's taking your sleep? Or, as my father-in-law says, what is stealing your joy? Loneliness is an epidemic, and it can be the strongest when we're surrounded by loved ones in situations that are supposed to be happy and full of hope. Maybe you've been struggling with something for a while now, and you are right there where Mary was for one reason or another at the end of your rope, and you just can't take anymore. Today, if you listen, you can hear what Mary heard. She didn't recognize him at first either. She was halfway into a conversation with the risen Jesus before he had to call her name to get her attention. And today, he is trying to get yours. I don't know exactly what that means for you, but I do know that when it hits you in the middle of who you are, it drops like a pebble in the pond of your soul and ripples spread out to every part of your being over time, because Jesus speaks to the core of us. He calls to our deep parts. And that moment, Mary's perspective changed. The reality of Jesus' resurrection was true, even when she assumed he had been stolen. But when he called her name, she recognized him, and her perspective changed. It can happen for you too.